Welcome everyone to Bethesda Gaming Saga. I'm Steve-O.
And I'm Eldon the Noble. Join us as we journey through some of gaming's most immersive and ambitious games ever made. Today we are going to look at the wild leaks and such that has been circulating around online, talk about people's concern for the game, answer our Patreon questions for the week, and more.
And before we do that, we got to give the biggest of biggest shout outs to our Patreon member, Falcor. He's crushing it on Patreon, crushing it on Discord, and his questions that are in the after show or the extended episode are phenomenal every week. So you guys got to get over there, check him out, and check him out. Falcor, thank you again as always.
All right, now when we look we'll be looking at the leaks right here, and Steve-O's going to be leading that discussion. But before we do that, I do want to say this, that ever since those codes have went out, sometime towards the end, second half of last week, I don't remember when, but basically since then, time has moved very weird. Like, because it's the waking up and it's every second of every day, it's like any new leaks drop, and it's constantly searching online, even when you're doing other things. And ever since last week, I can't tell if a week ago was a year ago or 5 hours ago. It both feels the same way because it's that, and then there's this new leak, and it's very much like, ooh, a leak. And then you're like, all right, where's the
Yeah,
next one? Oh man, is everyone seeing this? What is everybody's thoughts about this? Oh my
exactly.
word, it's been crazy, my dude. But why don't you lead us in that discussion?
Well, following up with that first, I feel like I'm the kid like behind plexiglass while everyone else is having fun, like with these reviews and these like during the embargo and these codes, and I'm just like got my face pressed against the glass, like when can I get one? And I'm not lying, I check every day on Keymailer too, every day to see like if a code popped in. I know I would get an email, but I go to the website on purpose and it just says request, requested, but nothing after that. So I'm every day I'm a little bit more disappointed. But following into that, so Eldon, you're right. These leaks have been insane. Some, they shot down pretty quick, which I'll admit, and I can't remember the specific ones, but guys like Bethesda itself or Xbox were shooting these down immediately. But yeah, Xbox shot down these leaks pretty quick, and like they're gone from the internet. I can't even tell you what they were, but the ones that
Well, I
stayed,
remember one. I remember
yeah.
one
Oh, what was
that
it?
was
What?
shot down, the ending of the game. Now, I guess I can share it
Oh, okay.
here because it's been proved that it was false, and
Yeah,
I've
absolutely.
verified that a couple of times. But the ending that was kind of circulated and it got people upset because it was like spamming in people's inboxes that
Hmm.
they shut down, and it's proved that it's wrong, is the ending is basically the same as Interstellar. That all of this was humans in the future leading us to get to, that was the point of this, um all this other stuff was to get us to the point, basically the ending of Interstellar, which honestly after I saw that, I didn't know it was false at the time. I was like, kind of wish I wouldn't have seen that,
You're right.
because that, but then again, I purposely looked for it, but I was like, that's kind of a dope ending. And when they said it was false, I'm like, well, I'm glad the ending of the game is not spoiled, but it's kind of a dope ending. I mean, I love
Yeah.
Interstellar, so I was like, that ending would be kind of slick because you
Yep.
think it's going to be aliens and it's not. I like that. But anyway, that was the only one I know that was really public and then was
Yeah.
instantly shot down.
I'm glad that got shut down because if I remember, that happened pretty early too. On
Yeah,
like
it
the like
did. Very.
someone would have had that game and would have had to play like I don't know, like in a different like time zone over and over again, like to somehow complete this in the
Well,
time
and that's
that they
when
revealed
that,
it.
and I think it might have went out even before those codes fully went out,
Oh,
to where
gotcha.
I was really confused. How did the ending of the game leak? I mean,
Yeah.
other games have had different aspects of the game story leak
Mhm.
to where again it makes you go, these people didn't have playing it, but still I
Yeah.
was wondering how it went, but it makes sense that it wasn't the actual ending of the game.
No, absolutely. But passing on from that, when they shot those down and like we've had a clear view of people really doing a good job. They got the review codes and everything I've seen. And also to preface this, if anyone's listening, possible spoilers here. I don't want to say that something isn't a spoiler to me than it is to you. So take that as you will. But going forward with that, what blew my mind was that the people that did these reviews, and or I shouldn't say reviews, but these little tidbits like, hey guys, I'm playing the game. So here's what's going on. I can't say much, but I can say this. And it's just enough. It's like that little drip of water someone's giving you in the desert. Like
Yes,
they start a
yes.
sentence and they say, "Hey, so you can do this, but I can't say anymore." And you're like, "What? What do you can't start a sentence like that." And
Or it's going to blow your mind. This
yeah.
is incredible. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, how? In what
Yep.
capacity? Are you talking about just from a technical, it looks amazing, runs smoothly?
Yep.
Are you saying from the gameplay? What are you talking
Right.
about?
Right. The one I saw that I think interested me the most, which I think, and I don't even think this is a spoiler. I think Todd Howard said this at some point, but I cannot go back and find it. And let me know if you heard this, but that you can
Yeah.
just pop out of your spaceship in the middle of space. Like you don't
Oh,
have to like land somewhere. You can literally manually you have to pick up your helmet, get in the airlock, and then go out into
oh.
space.
Yes. Now he did say this, that yeah, when you are on places where you don't have oxygen, you
Hmm.
will need to put your helmet on, which honestly, for the type of game, if this was Star Citizen, if this
Hmm.
was a simulator, that's fine, right? That goes with the territory. The fact this, I don't know. I feel like that's a odd thing to not do that auto equips when you go out, right?
Yeah.
Like I say that I've not played it, so I can't really
I
say.
can see what you
But
mean. They're like stepping out, you got your guns and everything, and you go out and immediately start dying instantly because you didn't put
right,
your
that
helmet
was
on.
kind of that to me in a game that's is more, I hate to use the word arcade
Hmm.
because BGS games aren't simulators.
Yeah.
It's hard to see that aspect not stand out as a way more simulator s than the rest. But I did now the I've basically seen, I don't know how confirmed it is, but I've seen from enough reputable sources and enough people saying that it does very much likely see if you're out in the middle of space, your ship isn't moving, and you just want to fly around in space, go out of your ship, you can.
Hmm.
Now, again, that also makes sense in the context of you can board ships, there's space stations, right? All of these things where it's not like you were confined, like the inside of your ship is an instance and the
Yeah.
outside of your ship is just a video, if you will, playing on, right? You get what I'm saying? It's a
Yeah.
completely different
Yep.
instance with being able to dock ships, get into combat in zero gravity shooting areas, and then space stations and stuff. I mean, that
Hmm.
it's one of those things where, yeah, that doesn't really surprise me. I'm not really like,
Yeah.
whoa.
I never thought about it before, I guess, but then it started I started snowballing too, and this is not necessarily a leak. This is just a personal opinion, but they talk about where you destroy a ship, an enemy ship, and you have to register that ship first, but then you can do
Mm-hmm.
what you want and sell it. So, how do you get that ship to where you need it to go? Like, if you're in the middle of space and you're in combat, you take that ship down, it's just floating in space. Like, I've never heard anything like, for instance, No Man's Sky. I hate to keep going back to that, but let's say if you find a ship on a planet, you just claim it, and then it'll automatically, like, there's no rhyme or reason. It just goes to your freighter or your base or something like that, and you can swap it out any time. And I don't see
So
Starfield doing that.
no, I think what's going to be is a combination of two things. It's going to be either your player character being able to do what I'm about to say, or you having a companion or shipmate with you that is able to do this. But basically, like some kind of mechanic trait where you go over and do some repairing to get it up to running. Right?
Mhm.
That would make sense because then
It
you
would.
can't do that right out of the gate. Like you instantly
Yeah.
jump into the game and you're taking ships,
Yep.
right? It makes sense that you have to work to where you are able to take ships.
That
I
does.
could
That
see
does.
that very much. That seems like something that if you don't want to take his ability, you could have a companion
Mhm.
that does that. And then you can talk to them and command them, hey, go fix the ship. And then now it's in a running state and you can get it where you need to go.
Yeah, and I bet they could probably fly it, like, tell them to take it to your base or a docking station or something like that, I
And
bet.
that is something I'm very interested to see because we know that it's been confirmed you can have at least 10 ships because a brief spoiler alert just for those, this is an achievement that has been leaked. Um so this is a spoiler for an achievement, but it is an achievement for collecting 10 ships, meaning,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it seems like you'll be able to have at least 10 ships. Now,
Mhm.
can you have different people piloting them? Can you have a fleet? Wouldn't that be something?
That
Forget
would
just a
be
human
cool.
companion by your side. You could have a ship companion by your
Yeah.
side, a ship
You
flying with you.
you
Oh,
imagine getting in a dogfight and, like, like, give a call, like, I need, like, 3 guys here right now," and they just,
yeah.
warp right in there, and they start fighting with you.
Oh, this game is going to
That
be
would be
so
I know.
good.
And guys, we're kind of, this being the season finale too of the podcast, because we got Starfield next week. And I mean, we're just like we're in awe. I mean, we said it
Yeah.
enough times too, but even talking about these leaks, it's just like I'm drooling down half my lip here. I don't
Yes.
It's like I want more. I want it now. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're interested in Starfield or Bethesda games, and you're just the same way. You want more
And
information. You want to have it in your hands.
and if you think we're overhyping this, then I would direct you. One of our tweets we posted basically said something to the effect of, "We're not overhyping it. We understand that Starfield is basically Fallout 4 in space with the roleplay mechanics of Oblivion and shipbuilding.
Hmm.
Now, I don't know, but that sounds like an amazing game. That is what I'm expecting, and that is exactly why I'm hyped. I'm not expecting this to be the game that ends all games, the greatest
Right?
game ever made, and there to be no issues, right? I'm not expecting any of that. I'm
Yep.
expecting Fallout 4 in space,
Mhm.
Oblivion role playing, and shipbuilding.
And the thing, about the hype, and people get on me about that, like, why are you hyping this game up? What if it fails? Well, okay, you can do a number of things, but
Hmm.
you, along with me, if you're a fan of this game or even Bethesda, you've watched this. It's like watching a plant grow. Like you grew a pepper plant, and you're just watching this
Mm-hmm.
thing grow because you've seen everything from its fruition of when they put the name out.
Filed the
They
trademarks. Yeah.
Exactly, where they did everything. So it's not like we're just hearing about this game a couple months ago and we're doing a hype on blindness. We've watched countless articles, videos, directs, everything that they could put out there, and we know it's like a salesmanship. These guys are selling us, the community, on this game, and they're doing a damn good job of
Yeah, and it's not like, again, we're also new people to BGS
it. Hmm.
games. We have both spent hundreds of hours in BGS games playing multiple BGS games that I think between the both of us, the only one we're not super familiar with is Morrowind.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, like, we know how BGS makes their games, and if you don't like their games, that's fair. We're not trying to say to you should enjoy them, but we do, and so we understand. Again, thinking about Fallout 4, Skyrim, combining that in space with shipbuilding
Hmm.
sounds like a dead gum good time that I'm looking forward to. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
absolutely.
looking forward to.
But to really finish the talk about the leaks some more, I think, and you'll agree with this, everything we saw that was credible, or at least hasn't been deemed uncredible, is more or less just an opinion of the person playing the game. And they're telling you, okay, you can do this, and that's not a spoiler, but you can do this, 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 and oh my gosh, you can also do this. And it might sound like it's going to be a spoiler, but it's not. It's more of a mechanic, is what I would
Right.
call it, and it's just a
Mm-hmm.
mechanic we didn't know about because they didn't reveal it. And I just,
Hmm.
even Todd Howard at Gamescom there the first night, the opening night, I know you watched that, and I ended up watching later. He
Mm-hmm.
said we have tons more secrets that we haven't revealed, and I think that says a lot for him because if you look at it from his angle, they probably revealed a lot, even in that direct,
Oh yeah.
of the overall scope of the game and what you're doing. So for him to say we have a lot more out there, and oh, I don't know if you heard this. This is kind of sidebar this, but P Times with
Mm-hmm.
Bethesda. He
Mm-hmm.
was at Gamescom today. I don't know if you saw his interview
I
with, I
think I
think, on Xbox,
did
and he said he's been playing the game for a while now. He's got
150
yeah,
hours.
150 hours, and he's not even close to being done.
Yeah, or
Um,
it honestly sounded like the way he said it, because there were a few like little mini minute 30-second
mhm,
interviews, and it's hard to keep track of which
sure.
it to me, it more so not that he has spent over 150 hours and he's not come close to beating the game or doing everything. It's more of he spent over 150 hours and there's whole sections of the game he's not
Hmm.
touched. Like maybe he's put 150 hours and he's not even touched
Yep.
shipbuilding or maybe outpost building. He's doing various things, or maybe he's done those but not touched activities or faction quests. Again, the way it reads is very much like I'm almost getting a little concerned that the game is too big, because you can have a game that's too big.
Hmm.
I know that sounds like, what are you talking about now? now
Yeah.
now you're saying the opposite. But you can have, and I'm trying to think of a game that just opens up too much. And yeah, there are games out there that
Mhm.
it's too big.
I
Uh,
think. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it's just that.
I was going to say, I think that's where I can appreciate our age. I think like a demographic from like I say loosely 25 up to like 55 even. I see a lot of old, middle-aged guys like that, excited for this game. But you talk about a large game. I mean, I hate to say it, but like my kids are 10 and 8, they would have no interest in this game. They're like, what do they want something to the point, quick.
Right.
They don't want to spend those hours upon hours. Like, I'm ready to start a company, with an outpost. Like, I'm looking forward to that like
Yes.
more than anything.
I'm looking
Um,
forward to booting up the game one evening for 4 hours and just end up wasting the whole time
mhm,
fiddling around with ships, because I did that with Fallout 4 and in a settlement building. I would
yeah.
boot up the game and spend 3-4 hours in the evening one evening, and that's all I would do. And I'm looking forward to that.
Something
And
I
I think,
saw, and
yeah,
sorry, I jumped the gun
nope,
there.
nope.
Um,
Go ahead, because we'll talk about that in the extended episode.
I was just going to say something. I think it was in the direct, and I didn't catch it. Which, as many times as I watched it, I should have, and I can't swear if it was or not. But Todd Howard talked about how you can't just, not like a No Man's Sky where if you have the fuel, you just go jump wherever you want. And
Hmm.
here, if you want to go to the furthest reaches of the universe, you've got to have the proper ship, like parts, modules and stuff like that. And I wasn't aware of that till just the other day. Like, I'm thinking, oh, I'll just go to the furthest planet I can. But it sounds like you're limited until you get that ship upgraded.
Right. So it's first of all, yeah, it's not fuel like No Man's Sky, which I'm glad for. They did say
Hmm.
they played around with fuel costs, and they said that it wasn't, fun, and which again I appreciate. Now, from what I've seen, I've heard two schools of thought about what that means gameplay wise. Whether it means that from the videos we've seen where you can only jump so far, whether that means that is, let's say you have, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, 10 units of jump fuel, and to jump to each planet costs 2. So you can only get to this far because you only have enough, to get there, and so you have to stop somewhere, get more fuel to
Yeah.
continue jumping, but you can go anywhere. Versus other ones that have said, well, no, there are certain ship requirements like in No Man's Sky to go to certain areas.
Hmm.
Now, I prefer to think of the first one, because with the way BGS builds their open worlds to basically lock whole aspects of the galactic map
Yeah.
behind progression like that, instead of, oh, shouldn't have gone here, this was too high of a
Right.
level,
Right.
isn't really their style. As well
Yeah.
as the open world, that is one of the criteria of open worlds, is that once you get past, say, like a tutorial, once you're into the
Hmm.
meat of the game, you're not in an area or locked to an area,
Yeah.
or you can go to only certain areas in certain orders. And so that would kind of fly in the face of basic design of open world. So yeah,
That's a good
that's
point.
kind of my thought.
And I saw some clips too where like we saw some enemies that were like level 60, I think,
Hmm.
like 65 like that. So we know we're going to see something like that. But it's a great point. I wonder if, which it should be this way, like, hey, I went to this planet. Oh my gosh, everything on here is level 50 and I'm level
Yeah.
2. I'm going to
Well,
get throttled. But
it's funny that you mention it. So one of the leaks that have come out, for those that don't know, and this leak isn't really going to spoil anything, but is a guy who got his hands on a copy of the game and has been playing it and has been selling his copies. I'm guessing he works at like some warehouse or something where he was able to get his
or
hands on a
did
bunch
work
of
there.
copies. Yeah, it did,
Yeah.
because no doubt he's going to be fired. And I feel bad for the people who pre-ordered those copies
Hmm.
that won't be getting them because
Oh, yeah.
he took them all.
Yep.
But his videos that he's been kind of leaking and sharing have been really bad quality, and he's very bad at gaming.
He
It's
is.
really bad.
I was going to tell you that he was trying to shoot guys and he was not
Yeah.
coming close at all. Like, it
But
was
I will
awful.
but I will say, I know that he wasn't getting very many shots into one of the guards, but
Hmm.
I almost wonder, it did feel like, for it being like one of the first people, it seems like, you encounter with gunplay,
Hmm.
the enemy wasn't really taking much damage. Now it could be because none of his shots were hitting, right?
Yeah.
And so I could see that. And I'm curious, Vasco, again, I don't want to spoil anything because of course Vasco's there in the beginning. I would assume. I would
Hmm.
have guessed that anyway, so that really shouldn't spoil anything.
Yeah.
Uh but Vasco acted a little different, and I've been in different discords chatting with people, and there's different reasonings behind that people are going into that with. So I'm just kind of curious to see because I don't
I
want to
am too.
spoil anything. But
I know what
nonetheless,
you're
it
talking about too.
has me.
I saw that clip.
Right, but all I'm gonna say is that it has me a little concerned with companion AI and an AI in general. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. I'm not saying whoa naysayer, right? But I'm also not saying it is going to be bad, and that if it turns out to be bad, I'm going to say, "Ha! See, I told you." I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying it
Yep.
either way. It just has me a little concerned.
But I think that's really it didn't have a lot with the leaks because obviously I didn't want to start. I didn't hear anything like, "Oh my gosh, hey, here's the entire synopsis of the game, beginning and
I
end."
will say this one thing, obviously, I think we can both agree that we don't actually want legitimate leaks to happen, right?
Yeah, right.
We want these people who are testing it and playing it to respect Bethesda and respect their NDA, all of these things. But if they're going to happen, we're going to eat them up, right? That's kind of
Hmm.
what they are. We don't want them to happen, but if they are, we're going to be there. I will say that if anything has to be leaked, what I would like to be leaked is the full backgrounds and traits and everything
Yeah,
so that because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on like designing my character in terms of
yeah.
appearance. I'm going to choose a pre-made model. I'm going to
Hmm.
change his hair, facial hair, and his eye color, and maybe some other small things, and I'm going to run with that. And if I can have all the backgrounds and traits beforehand, I'm not going to be spending very much time in character creator at all and jumping into the game because I will
Right.
already have selected my stuff. Now I'm pretty sure I know 2 of the 3 traits I'm going to go with, and they're not spoilers because those have already come out as part of the direct. But the kids stuff and
Yeah,
the hero worship. I'm gonna go with both
yeah,
of those for sure. But
yeah.
that third one's
I
still
like
up in
both
the
of
air.
those. The third one, that's where like I think those two sound great because I think those are like the fun ones. I think the third one, I'm going to focus on what I'm going to do. Am I going to be more of a stealthier character or a stealthier approach? Am I going to go guns
Right.
blazing? I'll look at that. But
Right. I might do the Sanctum Universum background because
oh
that was
yeah,
pretty
that's
dope.
good. Yeah,
But yeah.
that's going to be interesting, man. I'm so
Yeah,
stoked. Like
man. I know,
I'm so
dude.
excited. Like
I know, dude.
I can't get enough of it. But yeah, that's just thinking of leaks. That's about all I had on that.
So
Um,
yeah, so as we segue now into the second half of our episode, one of the things that a lot of people, a lot of the general public has concerns for Starfield. And what I want to do and what we're going to do is look at a list of the kind of top concerns that people have and why they shouldn't be a concern in terms of looking at facts. Now, as a note, I won't be addressing things like, well, Starfield looks boring and bland, or the gunplay looks weak, because that is more of a preference thing. I'm not here, this isn't really to sway your subjective thoughts on Starfield, but to provide you some objective facts that will hopefully, quell any worry that you have about Starfield.
mhm.
So the very first thing we're going to look at is, this is just Fallout 76, right? That
Yeah.
Fallout 76 comparison. And it's very important to note that, Starfield won't be as bad as Fallout 76 was. And I'm sure you've seen this take all around on
Oh
Twitter and
yeah.
everything. But there's something crucial that you got to know about the development of Fallout 76. When people refer to Bethesda Game Studio, BGS, they're referring to largely Todd Howard and that studio in Maryland. Which some people refer to Todd Howard and Co. or the BGS A team, but that is the studio there. The studio in Maryland, and Todd Howard is responsible for Morrowind, Oblivion, Fallout 3, Skyrim, and Fallout 4. After Fallout 4's DLC wrapped, Todd Howard and Co., the people in Maryland, moved on to start working on the engine overhaul and Starfield. Bethesda Austin, completely different group of people under the BGS umbrella, led the development of Fallout 76 with very little of BGS's A team involved.
Mhm.
So that means practically, if you didn't like the world building or the story or the gameplay loop, a lot of aspects of Fallout 76 that if you didn't like a lot of those things, then that makes sense in terms of comparing it to other BGS games because it wasn't developed by the same people that developed those other games. They had very little to do with Fallout 76. And honestly, it should not have been marketed as Todd Howard and Company's next big game because it wasn't. It
Yep.
really was frustrating that it was just marketing talk, that it was really another studio under BGS's umbrella. I
Yep.
mean, what that means is much like Elder Scrolls Online was developed by another studio and was published like that and was not seen to be the next big thing, right? It was just supposed to be, hey, here's your Elder Scrolls in an MMO format.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what Fallout 76 should have been
Yes.
because they hyped it as BGS's next big thing and it wasn't. And it had a lot of people disappointed because of that.
Yep. I
So,
mean,
what
to
that means, go ahead, go ahead.
no, no, I was gonna say you know that to a T. I'll let you finish there, and then I'll jump in there.
Right, but what that means for Starfield is that Todd Howard and company have not forgotten how to world build, not forgotten how to write a story,
Mhm.
not forgot how to create engaging game loops. They just weren't really ever involved much, especially the team with Fallout 76. So yeah, that's what I was going to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I deal with that on a daily basis with anyone I talk to. They say, "You're going to trust the team that gave you Fallout 70 or the company gave you Fallout 76." I'm like, listen, the company did give us that, but the company is a big company. And then I say, listen, Todd Howard, they were focused on after Fallout 4, they were focused, like you said, focused on Starfield and other things. And then they come back with, well, I think I saw Todd Howard market it. Well, we probably did because he's the face of the company and they want to use him as
Yeah,
that.
well,
But
see that's the thing. Yeah, they put Todd Howard front and center whether they or Todd Howard did himself to market it as it
right.
and they shouldn't have.
Right, and that's definitely a blemish on them, and I get why they did it because you see Todd Howard and you see Bethesda, you think, oh, the next Fallout 4. But
Right.
definitely an error on their part.
And they did that also because they knew how far Starfield was,
Hmm.
because they were doing such an engine overhaul
Yeah.
and how ambitious Starfield was.
Yep.
They knew they couldn't have went from 2015 to 2022. I think was what I think maybe they were. Had it not been for the pandemic, I think they may have would have been putting for 2021. Either
Yeah.
way, they couldn't have gone 6 7 years and then be like, we just been working on the same game the
Yeah.
whole time.
Right. And but to exactly when people argue with me on that point, I'm like, listen, okay, I'm not going to tell you 100%. Obviously, going to change your mind. You're convinced that Bethesda and Todd Howard are as one, and anything they make, it's all their fault. They're crap. But I told the guy the other day. I said, and this goes in life in general. I said, if you judge us by our failures or what's most recent, you're never going to get the honest and the best person out of any of us. That goes for game companies too.
Right.
So you look at all their previous masterpieces and or lack thereof, and you're going to have failures, you're going to have highs and lows. That's just natural. But yeah, your credit, Fallout 76 was a completely halfway across the country, another team putting that together, and I still hate that Todd Howard was even involved in that, as a
Yeah.
marketer. Um,
Well, no, I mean, he was involved in some of I think he was probably more involved in most anyone else because it was his decision to make no NPCs, no talkable
oh, okay,
NPCs.
okay,
Other people, if you look at a lot of things that have come out since then and kind of little interviews, other people basically were like, I don't know, that kind of, but Todd Howard, he was like, no, we're doing it. And again, on paper, I get it. It's interesting design,
yeah,
but it shouldn't have gone past the paper stage
yeah,
because practically, I mean, you don't even have to test that to know
yeah.
why. Okay, but in practice, that would make for a boring
I
experience,
wonder if
and
in
that's
his mind
exactly
he
what it
thought if
was.
he didn't do NPCs, it would just be filled with the people in that world, the 20, 30
That was
people.
exactly why. That if
And
you saw or heard another person, that was another real
yeah,
person.
another
That
real
was the
player.
exact reason why. Yeah,
Yep. I know the first
but
times I played, and again, they've done some tremendous updates. I'll give them credit. It's
oh
fun.
yeah,
It's fun now to play. But I remember the first time I built a base, two guys came over, and these guys were like already level 50, 60, close to 100, had power armor. And they're like, "Man, it's a nice place you got here," and they just blew me to smithereens, blew me up, blew the camp up. I mean, I had to use all my resources to rebuild it. They were terrible people.
Oh yeah, good times, good
Oh yeah.
times. All right, but the second, thing I want to look at when looking at general concerns is the bugginess, right? Because this is a BGS game,
Hmm.
and BGS makes notoriously buggy games, especially at launch. And I'm not going to say that they don't or that anything like that, but I will tell you that this opinion is definitely well founded. It's completely understandable why you expect Starfield to be not only a buggy mess, but with the scale, it to be like really, really bad, right?
Hmm.
Totally legitimate concern. If I didn't know as much as I'm about to share with y'all, I would be concerned too. But I mean, because you even play Skyrim and how many times it's been re-released
Yeah.
and how many years it's been, and it's still buggy as heck.
Hmm.
But like I said, so the Xbox Game Studio head, Matt Booty, his experience with Starfield, and he said, quote, if it shipped today, and this was at the direct back several months ago, if it shipped today, this would have the fewest bugs in any game that Bethesda has ever shipped with.
Hmm.
Now, that's pretty remarkable because this is a way more ambitious game.
Yep.
And and this is somebody with knowledge of game development and state of things, which sounds great, but this could be chalked up as marketing talk, right?
Sure.
But here the thing is, at the same time, this goes hand in hand with my third point I want to make is that polish, right? Well, again, bugs and polish kind of go hand in hand,
Hmm.
and the bugginess. But Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, said that they've been having everybody at Xbox Q&A working on Starfield and will continue to work on Starfield. Now, whatever you think about Xbox's polish on their games, whatever, but what that means is Bethesda has been polishing the game
Hmm.
and QA testing it, and Xbox has. And if you're again think that's just marketing talk, I would suggest you to look at the 2022 gameplay, both look at the gunplay, look
Oh
at the
yeah.
faces, look at the lighting, look at the decorating and the scenes, and then look at 2023. You can see
Absolutely.
that there's definitely some insane amount of polish. So knowing that, I 100% believe the statements about the bugginess and the polish.
Hmm.
And then this, I was putting this together as a list and researching this and knowing this before the leaks came out with people testing it where they're talking about how smooth it runs.
Yeah.
I've seen some of this leaked footage and it does run smooth, right? Again, we're thinking about this game at launch and
Yeah.
it does run smooth, stable, all of that. So that's kind of good to know that again, if you're worried about it being buggy or polished or not being polished, there's plenty of evidence to support that it will be, not that it won't be buggy, right?
Yep.
Not the saying that at all. Or that there won't be areas or it'll be 100% polished, that there won't be unpolished things. But compared to Fallout 4, compared to Skyrim,
Hmm.
compared to BGS, not other games, BGS, this should be a pretty good experience at
Oh yeah.
launch.
Well, then you look at Matt Booty too. I know Xbox is bought Bethesda, but a guy like that, ahead him or Phil Spencer, they're not going to put their credibility on the line by saying something like that, especially months ago. He's not going to
Right.
say, "Oh, hey, this is a few amount of bugs," and then you get it at launch and it's filled with bugs. He's not. He's not the kind of guy that's going to put his reputation on the line and just to say it for say it purposes to boost something up.
Right. Yeah. Especially, I would especially say, Phil Spencer too
Hmm.
wouldn't do that because he is the lead of all. I mean,
Oh
he's
yeah,
head of
he's
Xbox.
the face of it.
That right. Right. So that would affect console sales,
Hmm.
game sales, not just of Starfield, but of other games.
Exactly.
The
Yeah, because they're going to say, "Why
valuableness
would you believe
of the
me?" Yeah.
right, because correct me if I'm wrong, because Halo, the last Halo kind of had a, I don't know if it was a disastrous launch or the game wasn't what everybody expected, but correct me if I'm wrong, there wasn't a ton of like Phil Spencer going out saying this is the greatest game ever or
No,
anything
no,
like
he was
that.
kept pretty quiet. And I'm a big Halo guy, and they did the same thing. They did like a Fallout 76. They said, "Hey, let's make this open world," and it was really, really did not just it didn't appeal to the Halo fans that were coming back to play it. And I played like 10 minutes of it. I just couldn't get into it, and that's disappointing for me because I'm a huge Halo fan.
Yeah. Yeah. But so that, yeah, they're not going to stake their reputations on it.
Hmm.
Now continuing the next thing, number 4, because I have like 7 things. Number 4 is the engine, the creation engine. A lot of people say they need to ditch this engine and move on because it is kept together by duct tape and all of that. But I'll say one thing for one, they just did an engine overhaul. So this is Creation Engine 2.0. We've not seen that in the works to judge it, right? Because if
Right.
you look at Unity, right, how many different versions of Unity have come out? You're
Hmm.
not going to compare one version to the previous version and just say they all need to be scrapped, right? You know what I'm saying? Or games
Exactly.
made on it. So we have not seen it. We don't know the state it's in. I will say this is something that's interesting. Not too long ago, I watched kind of a mini documentary of modders being interviewed that did a lot for Skyrim and talking about the future in Starfield and such. And modders actually love the creation engine. So players say they need to ditch creation engine.
Yeah.
People who actually work with the creation engine to create mods say they love it. And that's why they're able to mod as much as they are. Now, I want you to close your eyes and think about Skyrim, Fallout 4, especially those two games without
Hmm.
the modding scene.
Oh,
How
it's
much different those games would be.
they would
How they
just
would
yeah.
still they would be popular like The Witcher for years,
Uh-huh.
still
Yep.
have their communities being played, but they wouldn't be the huge communities they still are
No,
being played and being enjoyed and being kept alive, right? If they
absolutely.
switched from the creation engine to say Unity or another popular engine, that would be lost. I don't
Hmm.
want to lose that. And again, we still have to see 2.0. So again, people who actually work with the engine outside of Bethesda, they like it. So yes, do they struggle with performance optimization and things like that and bugginess? Absolutely. I'm not going to say that they don't, but we don't have our hands on 2.0 yet. We don't have our hands on
Yeah.
Starfield to know if it's a trash engine like some people are saying.
Yeah. I mean, plus you look at they're used to using that because the amount of data and stuff they put into the game. Like
Hmm.
I think of Call of Duty. Okay, well, if they get a new engine or they get something you got better graphics and maybe a little bit more speed or your frames per second, but you're not putting a lot into it. It's the same thing. Smaller areas, sandboxes, if you will. And here we're going to an entirely thing. I mean, we can't even imagine the scope of this game until we get into it.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think that creation engine is going to be just fine. And besides, it's an engine, whether it's a video game engine, a car engine. If you got to add some stuff or tweak some stuff, if you treat it right, it'll keep going.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Hmm.
So the next thing, number 5, is the procedural generation within Starfield. Has people, they see the word procedural, see that it's a space game. It's got to be No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
Why are they doing this? This is supposed to be a story-based RPG. Why are they procedurally generating everything? Well, first, I'd like for you to calm down, do some history on BGS before flipping out like that, and understand they've been incorporating procedural generation from at least Oblivion.
Yep.
Because what they would do is they would create tools to paint landscapes, to put things on landscapes, and then they would come through and fine tweak it. Okay. A lot of this is that, right?
Hmm.
So
That's right.
imagine this. So imagine you put down a planet that is going to be nothing but a savanna biome, and you need to paint the grass. Are you going to put each individual blade of grass, or are you going to have a tool that generates the grass randomly,
Hmm.
procedural generate, right? So when we think about procedural generation, it's pretty much universal in the gaming space to create anything at any kind of scale. And I mean that even outside of open world games, right? Unless you are
Right.
placing things individually, which I feel like over 9.5 times out of 10, you're not. You're going to have to rely on procedural generation. And they do it not with like No Man's Sky. Again, not making shade against No Man's Sky. It was very technically impressive what they did.
Yeah.
But what they did was they created this tool, they checked it against some planets and said, all right, this looks good. And then they let it generate without ever putting eyeballs on it,
Right.
and they released it. That is not what Starfield does, BGS does. What they're doing is they're using procedural generation as tools, then they're going back through and making sure everything is good, and they're using that to also procedural generate, some of the Radiant quest,
Hmm.
some of the stuff you can randomly find, like we've talked about before. We saw in the direct how
Yep.
an area can generate something one playthrough versus another, which is flipping insanely exciting,
Oh yeah.
right? But it's very much not like huge like story pieces. But again, procedural generation is across the gaming space.
Oh yeah.
BGS has been using it for games, several games. And I trust that, again, this is the same people. And when I say same people, I don't mean the same studio. I mean the same literal people who were leading this game, made Fallout 4, Skyrim, Oblivion,
Mm-hmm.
Fallout 3. I trust that they know how to make their own games that they've been making. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying?
Absolutely. I mean, people's argument on that, I think, is just sourness. And I hate to
Yeah.
keep like I'm not trying to throw out that it's all PlayStation guys that are upset they can't play the game, because I'm not picking on you all. I know it's not all of you are like that. And I hate the stereotype, but a lot of I do come in contact with. I'll go to their page and their YouTube. They'll
Yep.
comment and they're just so nasty. And I go to their page and it's literally like anti Xbox. I mean, it's almost like a
Yep.
hate
And pro
crime.
PlayStation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a
And
hate
pro
crime in video
PlayStation.
games. It's crazy. So I see that. I'm like, why are you guys so bitter about this? I'm sorry you can't play the game. Go get a used Xbox, get a dollar trial for the Game Pass, load this bad boy
Mhm.
up on September 6th, and see for yourself. But don't
Well,
put down the
it's
procedural generation, because it's beautiful when they do it right.
yeah.
And like you said, these guys, Todd Howard, have done it right for years now.
I mean, I can't think of any of their games where you can look at what they did procedural generation wise and gone, that was not done well. Now,
Hmm.
you can disagree and not like Radiant Quest because it's not story, wasn't hand done right. That's not what you can still disagree with it and still not say that it's done poorly,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
All I'm saying is the procedural generation in this will not be done poorly. Now, you could still not like the Radiant Quest. You could still not like how every time you go through a certain area might generate a different structure or a different thing, right? I'm not saying you have to like that. I'm just saying it's not going to be done poorly. It's not going to
Yep.
be done willy-nilly and at the snap of a hand. All right, this generated everything. Now I can go on a coffee break,
Yep.
right? It's not. It won't be done in that kind of way.
Exactly.
So in talking about No Man's Sky, it brings up to the next one. The fact that this is just a No Man's Sky clone, or No Man's Sky with RPG mechanics, or even No Man's Sky meets Skyrim or Fallout or whatever you want to compare it to. That is actually now again that is a little bit more subjective than objective, but there is still some objective facts that tear that down. One of which is that they're two different genres of
Yep.
game. They're not even the same genre of game, but they're both sci-fi epic games
Yeah.
where you can do two things. You can both manually gather resources like mining, and you can survey and scan planets and the different things on the planets. I don't know about you, but No Man's Sky wasn't the first one to do that.
Nope.
And that is pretty universal, especially the resource gathering among all their, a lot of games. And Skyrim, you did some resource gathering, not a ton, but if you wanted to build a house and such, you did some resource gathering.
Hmm.
Fallout 4, the resource gathering was more scavenging than actually like chopping down a tree,
Sure.
mining, but that makes sense. You're in a post apocalyptic
Yeah.
situation, but resource gathering. So this isn't new to them. And a sci-fi game about exploration, it makes sense that part of the exploration is exploring and
Exactly.
finding things. So to compare it to that just because of those things is really weird, because apparently No Man's Sky invented the sci-fi game,
I know.
right?
That's Yep. Yep. That's
And
the
it's and like I've said before, to say that it's that is to take away from what No Man's Sky did in
Mhm.
its respective right. Again, because technologically speaking, their procedural generation and their ability to generate that many plants on a technical sense is incredible. That
Mhm.
is flipping awesome. That not one person, if they dedicated their whole life, could even come close to seeing every single planet, even if he was on creative mode, didn't like not had to worry about fuel, could just land on a planet, be there, lift off, go to the next planet. If he did that his whole life, is even more than a full-time job, he wouldn't even come close to going through all of it. That is incredible.
Yep.
So to compare what BGS is trying to do is to take away from that. And then to compare Starfield to what BGS is trying to do is to take away from
Absolutely.
No Man's Sky, to take away from what Starfield is trying to do, because they're very, very different games. But
Absolutely.
anytime, and I've said it before, anytime you start talking of people start talking about it, they'll say even the manual mining is the same. It was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You're implying that you have a whole list of things, and then this is like even the smallest thing is. All right, give me the other list of things
Yeah.
that you're saying that is like No Man's Sky. The two of them are the same, and then we can talk, because
Yep.
you're not going to have a lot of things.
No.
Aesthetically, it's a different art direction, different genre of game, different gameplay loop.
Hmm.
So many things are different, but they're both grand sci-fi, on a grand epic scale. So they're the same game.
And I think that's all people see is they see sci-fi. You have a mining laser and a ship, and they just see that and they think, "Oh, same game." And
Yeah.
I mean, I really can't add much to that because you nailed it to a T. The only thing I'll
Yeah.
say from playing as many hours as No Man's Sky as I did, even the procedurally generated planets get very boring after a while because they all
Oh,
turn into the
very
same thing.
quickly.
I mean, any water
Very
planet's the
quickly.
same. They might change the color of the water, but and then
Eh.
what they call it, a luxury planet is the same. A gas planet, and it gets very old after a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And the wildlife and the enemies, and
Hmm.
yeah. So finally, the last thing, and that is the criticism, and it's died down in recent weeks, but still, is that only 10% of the planets will have life. And I've seen people say, well, then am I only going to pay for 10% of a game? But I want to remind you, there's 1,000 planets in the game. If 10% of planets have life, that means there's 100 planets with native wildlife, native plants, right?
Hmm.
100 planets. If that doesn't astound you, and these planets also, some of them have different biomes within the planet. It's not
Hmm.
just like a planet-wide desert planet, planet-wide mountain
Yep.
planet, planet-wide ocean planet. Different biomes in one planet. And those different biomes will have its own wildlife. If that doesn't make you go whoa, then I don't know what will.
Absolutely.
Because it's absolutely insane. But you have to know, what people hear that is that all the other planets are going to be absolutely and 100% desolate. But what is being said here is 10% of planets will have native life. Just like you can go to that planet, and at that point you will be a life on that planet. I'm sure you will be able to go to plenty of those planets and find other little outposts that somebody has made,
Oh yeah.
raider gangs that have oxygen and stuff like you will be
Hmm.
wearing on there. So it's not like all those other planets are going to be completely devoid of any kind of interaction with anything.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So that just, now I'm sure a lot of them will, right?
Sure.
Right? I'm sure a lot of them will, like the moon. Imagine the moon. I wouldn't imagine to see much of anything on there,
Yeah.
right? Something like that. So, but still, 100 planets.
Hmm.
That, again, it's like, not, instead of looking at what you don't have, look at what you do
Yeah.
have. 100 planets.
And
Full.
you
It
know
is
what else
just.
I
Whew.
see about that? The biggest thing too is in my
Mhm.
mind, some I could say, okay, you got 100 planets, and it's not like there are 100 lined up in a row where you know where you're going. You got 1,000 planets. You don't know which one of those thousand is going to be
Right.
life or not. So that's another interesting aspect. Someone traveling around looking for, like you said, an outpost, or maybe you just stumble on a planet that you didn't think have life or had life, and then you
Mhm.
go to a biome and here's a Crimson Fleet rebel base, one that will fill with a bunch of
Right.
dudes and some elite legendary gear that you get. That's
Right. Yeah,
none
you
of
could.
this.
Right, you could land, say you land, hey, land on this planet. This planet's filled with insert name of an ore.
Mhm.
There's especially one area on this location. So you pull up the planet, it kind of shows the location, so you go to land in it, and there actually is already a team there trying to mine it, and they're raiders, so they
Yeah.
shoot you, right?
Yep.
You don't know that kind of stuff is going to happen. So yeah, so those are kind of my 7 big things that people have expressed concerns with. And I think, like I said, once you really start looking at the facts, they're not really concerns anymore.
No.
Now,
No.
there are things like the 30 frames a second on console, and it doesn't bother me because I am actually inclined to agree with Todd Howard. I would rather the visuals, the graphics, the textures, and the
Mhm.
lighting be as best as possible than to have a frame rate be higher. And
Yep.
again, this is on console, not on PC. But at the same time, if you're someone who is used to playing on 60 frames a second, 120 frames a second, if you're used to gaming that way and you don't like the look of 30 frames a second, that's fair. I'm not telling you you shouldn't be
Yep.
upset about that, right? I'm not saying that at all, but
Yeah.
that was just kind of 7 things wanted to go
Oh, well, he was smart
over.
about saying it too. When he said, "Listen, we could give you 60 frames. The game, the engine can do that, but we're trying to keep it uniformity across the whole
Right,
game. We don't want you to go into a place
right.
where it looks amazing, then you go to the next place, you're like, what is this? Why does it look? Why did it get worse? You
You
know,
got yeah,
I,
exactly,
and I
exactly.
agree with you. He's smart for that.
So now, kind of in the last little leg of our episode, our finale, we're going to look at our community question from our Discord, coming from our member Falcor. And this question, and Steve-O, you can answer it for us first.
Sure.
Given that Starfield will be a demanding game, how do you intend to balance life with playing Starfield? When do you intend to play? How long will your sessions be, do you think?
First of all, Falcor, great question as always, and multi-layered question. I love that. And I'm going to say this as a, I don't want to call myself a professional gamer because I don't make money for it. I'm not on any kind of esports team, but as a gamer, as long as I can remember, from before I was double digits in age, you
Yep.
learn to balance. And anybody listening can, if you've played games more than 10 years, you can absolutely do this. And I'll say it from a quote that I heard years ago. I think Tony Robbins said it. And he said, now, granted, games, you don't have to have games, but if you, what he said, if you don't get what you want, you get what you have to have. And I have to play this game. So I am factoring it into my life perfectly. I mean, I've got my kids' school schedule down when they need to do their homework, what time they go to bed, which that actually helps out a lot because now the school's in, they're on a schedule. So I can really balance everything after that in the evening.
And you have kids old enough that you don't have to completely baby them. I have a 9-month-old,
Right,
so
right.
that's a little
And that's
different.
a perfect add-on to when you talk about it because that's a completely different scenario. That could be an all-night thing. That could be, well, no game tonight because the poor guy's sick. And I've been there. I feel you for that. And I can remember those days specifically because my son was born in 2013, and I'm that's only a couple years after Skyrim. I was still pretty thick into that. Or even playing games with friends online, and they kind of stopped for a long time for a couple years, where I was only on single player games. And
Mhm.
so, the balance of life is actually pretty good at my age, with my kids' age, with the wife and mine schedule. Now, there's going to be times, weekends, that's going to get thrown a wrench because you got to do stuff, but I would say, to answer the question specifically for you, Falcor, is that I intend to play at night, probably somewhere 7:30, 8 o'clock on. After that, weekends will change, but that's kind of like I leave that open as a slot for that. Could be early morning, could be midday. Just depends what, especially winter coming up. Winter where you're not going outside and doing stuff, and that can change a lot. But the sessions,
Right.
honestly, that's that is a great question because I can sit here and play for easily 5 or 6 hours, I feel like. But then again, I'm older now. I mean, I might make it three, depending on what time I start, and I'll be like, oh gosh, I gotta get out of here. But
Well, I
that's
don't
a
know
phenomenal
about
question.
now. I don't know about you, but Fallout 4 was bad about this for me. You can't just play 2 hours because if you boot it up for an hour, 2 hours, you're like, "Well, I've not actually done anything yet. I've
Hmm.
barely gotten into the game." And I feel like Starfield is only
Yep,
going to be worse
that does scare
because
me a
there is
little
so
bit.
much you could do. Yeah. So, it is interesting. So, I actually am very lucky. So, it comes out for early access Thursday. My plan is it comes out on 8. I plan on playing it as much as I can for that night. Again, that starts to be when my little man, he's actually about to be 10 months, when he goes to sleep. It's going to be fun looking at this podcast in years future and thinking about about my 10-month-old son. But anyway, uh, and I'm going to have to be, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to play initially right at 8 because he's been struggling to go down to sleep. Anyway, but I will be playing at least till 2 or 3 in the morning. I know
Nice.
I'll have Mountain Dews lined up
Sure.
for that, classic gamer stuff. Um, but and then we'll be focusing on the next day on Friday, recording the podcast,
Hmm.
which will be then known as a Gamescast. But anyway,
Right.
getting that out, and that may take all day Friday, right?
Hmm.
Who knows?
Yep.
Still like to play some Friday, but we'll see. But the interesting point that I'm going to make is that starting Sunday afternoon, my wife, my son, and our dog actually be going to spend some time with her family to enjoy some time because there's something where her family lives, where she grew up. There's an event going down there that she wants to go to. Her dad also just celebrated or no, will be celebrating here soon, a big milestone birthday. So she's going down for kind of both for like a week that
Nice.
first week. So within literally just a few days of Starfield coming out, I will have my house and my schedule pretty much to myself.
Yep.
So I will be playing in that week. I will be playing so much Starfield.
Oh
And
yeah.
that first podcast episode, our next one after this one will be kind of our initial how our experiences, right? We won't have a ton of in-depth because we'll just have been playing it for a handful of hours, probably less
Mhm.
than 10. But that next episode, because again, if we record on a Wednesday like we've been recording,
Yeah.
that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, yeah, I'm gonna be coming in with a
Yep.
lot more information. Now, on the long term, I do play more in the evenings, but it's kind of also again with my son and his age, I kind of fit it in sometimes when I can.
Mhm.
My job allows me to basically, it's a work from home type of job, basically, to oversimplify it. So meaning if I had the ability to say if I wanted to do some of my gaming during the day and then do some of my work at night, I can do that. I have great flexibility in my schedule, 8 times out of 10. So going into Starfield, my problem is actually the opposite, I feel like, of most people's problems. I'm worried that, especially because of that week, I will be able to spend too much time and have burnout.
Mhm.
So I'm going to have to pace myself.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think honestly that's going to be too much of a problem because no matter how much I love a game and am into a game, I can only sit down, and especially after, say, Starfield coming out, that initial first night or two, I can only my like ADHD can only allow me to do any one thing for so long, no matter how much I'm enjoying it. So after a while, I am, especially like getting into Tuesday and Wednesday, I am gonna need a break. I'm gonna need to do something else entirely other than gaming. So I'm hoping that will keep me balanced. But how long my sessions will be, probably like what I said, it'll be difficult to just
Yeah.
play an hour of it.
Now, I talked long term there initially on that question, but you brought up a good point on short term and something you said it. I don't know why it kicked in my head. So my youngest plays baseball, fall baseball. He signed up this year, and his
Mhm.
first practice is actually this Friday, 6:30 to 8 at night. Now they're not always going to be on Fridays. I know the next one's on a Tuesday, but that could throw a wrench in the initial, when like, especially like if the game, like I would, God forbid, I would hate to see like his practice be 6:30 to 8 or something like that on the day of release. But if that's the case, my wife understands how important this is. She would take him, but that could throw a wrench down the road. Like if I plan on doing something on that night or 100%, like, oh wait, I got practice, and then I'll have to wait till we come back. But
Yeah.
other than that, and short term wise, that's really about the only thing I think throwing a wrench that I can't say for certain. I would
Yeah.
know,
But
but
luckily, like I said, I've got a good amount of a highway, but I'm hoping that I will get, because we're both excited about City Skylines coming
mhm.
out towards the
Oh
end of
yeah,
October. So that gives basically a month and a half to 2 months. And I'm hoping that in that time, I will have my first, okay, I've enjoyed it. Let me move on to something else.
take a
I'll
break.
come back and play it again. Let me take a break. Now, I'm wondering in that time how many hours that's going to be,
That's
and I'm
true.
also looking forward to seeing how long it's going to take me to beat my current Steam record of Fallout 4, which is sitting at a little over 500 hours, which I know isn't a
Ooh,
lot to most people, but I want to see how long it's going to take me to beat
yeah,
that.
that's a
All
good
right.
that's a good question.
Now, guys, if you've noticed, this has been our longest episode yet, and that's because this is our season finale. I can't believe, I just remember it seemed like yesterday Steve-O reached out to me, and we started talking, getting to know each other. I remember one of the first things I found out, and I sent him the GIF. Did we just become best friends?
Yep,
Yep,
yep.
because we started talking about the movie of Dragonheart and the music behind it.
Oh yeah,
And I'm like, I'm literally one of the only people I know that have not only seen that movie but love the music because
Hmm.
it's a random movie from the '90s, right?
Oh yeah,
And the fact of when I told Steve, oh man, because we were talking about music, I said you got to go check this movie music out, and he was like, dude, I already know and I already love it. I was like, oh man, we just became best friends.
absolutely.
So it's crazy to see, and it's how far we've come, and it's wonderful. Y'all support, y'all listening, especially Falcor, man. We appreciate you. This has been a wonderful season. And in our extended episode, we will be looking at the future of our podcast.
Hmm.
And in our extended episode, we're going to be discussing, Gamescom, our favorite characters we have played in previous BGS games and how they might look in Starfield. Like I said, the future of our podcast and more. You can head on over to the Patreon to unlock the extended show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, until next time, and new season next time too. So excited for that.
Yeah.
This has been Steve-O.
And Ellen and Noble for Bethesda Gaming Saga. May your adventures be filled with Nuka Cola
And never end with an arrow to the knee.